Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2004 film Seed of Chucky. Yes, working our way through this, and we're almost done with it, but then I'm also going to do the 2018 remake, which I've heard is a real stinker, and then I'm doing each season of the TV show reviewed separately. Now, just know, I got a haircut, but in the show review ones, seasons 1 and 2, I already did those, so I had longer hair, so it's going to be kind of weird, because like I'll have shorter hair for these, and then all of a sudden I'll have longer hair for those, so a little bit weird. Also, no colored lighting for this, even though I've kind of been doing that lately, just because I wanted to keep the continuity with all these reviews not doing colored lighting for it, so that's why. But, been enjoying going through this. Let's talk about Seed of Chucky, which, from what I hear, gets a lot of hate as being, in a lot of people's opinions, the worst installment of Chucky. That is yet to be seen for me. I have seen Curse and Cult before, and from what I remember, I liked Cult, but I didn't like Curse. I'll have to see where Curse falls for this. Thus far, this is the lowest rated film. Well, no, it's not going to, I don't think it's not going to be the lowest rated. I thought the third one was bad. I think this one's, yeah, better. A little bit better. So, but anyway, let's get into it. Written and directed by Don Mancini, who did Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and 2 episodes of the show. The film had to have a disclaimer that Britney Spears doesn't appear in the movie since someone who looks like her is in it. And I'm going to be honest, like, that whole sequence was kind of stupid. Like, I understand it was supposed to be, like, a current reference to, you know, a topical celebrity, and just kind of be like, this music sucks, and what she represents sucks, and just had her, like, driven off the road by Chucky, and it just, it's a dumb moment in the film, and this film has that. Like, they have really stupid, terrible moments, but it has really awesome, good moments, too, so it really is a pretty big mixed bag as far as it goes. This is the only film in the franchise in which Chucky never uses the default good guy voice. That is interesting, because, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that until I was doing the research on it. I was just like, oh man, that's crazy. Like, he's always doing the good guy voice, and in this, he doesn't do it. That's interesting, because he's never in a situation where he needs to, like, get anyone to get closer to him necessarily. Like, he's always the aggressor. He's always going to people. And he's not in a family setting either. And that's when he had always used that kind of good guy voice, was in family settings, to seem more benign. Like, he starts on a film set about the Chucky, you know, murders, basically. And, you know, from there, he just doesn't need to act like a good guy. This is the only film in the franchise to have nudity. That's another thing. And that did strike me. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, there's nudity in this. I don't remember seeing nudity in the other films. And I guess there aren't in the other ones. I mean, there's certainly not in the TV show, but it's interesting. And I'd be interested to know the reasoning for actually having nudity in this one and not in all the other ones. It seems kind of weird. The role of Red Man was written with Quentin Tarantino in mind. That's a big leap to go from Quentin Tarantino, who you want, and then casting Redman for that position. I mean, I will say this. It's very weird to see Redman in it. He has a particular style of acting where, like, he's not a good actor, but he's not a bad actor. And his acting's kind of funny, but it's funny in, like, an enjoyable way for me personally. Also, seeing him in this, I was like, first of all, it seems like he's very much out of place in this film. But I like his acting, because, like I said, it's kind of fun. But second of all, it made me remember how much I love the movie How High. Yes, I'm not just into horror films, and I love some bad stuff, but How High is so much fun with Redman and Method Man. It makes me laugh. I love that film. It's very funny. Mancini has said that the gender confusion of Glenn in this film is a metaphor for his own coming out, which, watching it now, you can definitely see that, but the thing is, he couldn't talk about that stuff back when this film came out as much, so it is received very differently, and I think a lot of the hatred that this film gets is probably built around the character of Glenn, And I understand that in certain instances. I don't understand people hating the character because of the gender confusion he goes through, or they go through. I'm just going to refer to the character as Glenn because it's just easiest to go with one name. So, and that's the kind of the original name, other than, S-Face, which is how it starts with. Kind of funny, kind of dumb. But yeah. I understand why people don't like the characters, and it's a little bit weird to bring Offspring into this whole thing, especially Offspring that has like a greenish color to its skin, plastic, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, that was one of my big questions. I'm like, why does Glenn have greenish skin? It's so odd. It's such a weird choice. The other question a lot of people have about the character of Glenn, I know, is why does Glenn have a British accent? Which does seem really weird, and I think they should have not gone that direction. They should have just been like, just have him have a regular American accent. But it does make sense, because when you catch up to Glenn in the beginning of the film, they tell you basically that Glenn has spent a lot of time in the UK. Like, all of their cognizant time is in the UK. So, learning, talking in that environment, like, they're gonna end up talking that way. So it makes sense. It's not something that was necessary. It's kind of like a dumb decision, but it makes sense at the same time. So just saying. All right, let's get into the events of the film. Starting with the CGI sperm in the beginning of this. It's too much. That was way too much for me. Like, that told me right up front, this film is not going to be about being scary or having, like, good horror, like being a legit good horror film. It's going to be ridiculous. Because when you start with sperm, CGI, terrible looking CGI sperm for the most part, because, all CGI was bad back in that time, it's just over the top, it's ridiculous, and it sends the message to the audience that we filmmakers are not taking this seriously, so that's the expectation we're setting for you right now. So don't take this too seriously for the same reason. So I was just like, this is how they're starting this? Kind of weird. I like that before you see who you assume is Chucky in the very beginning, you hear the iconic laugh. Love that, because I think they did use the actual Brad Dourif laugh. And then the POV shots, you find out it's Glenn eventually, but those POV shots, very well done, very cool, especially when the kills are happening. Especially the kill where he jumps up and stabs where they jump up, they stab the British father, and then they, like, all POV still going, like, go over the railing of the second story and fall all the way down. That shot was really awesome. It looked really interesting and impressive, and I love how this film begins for that reason. There's a lot of, like, cool stylistic things that they have done in the film, which shows you that, like, Don Mancini is a legitimate good director. It's a bit odd how they just throw Glenn at you the way that they do, although it is interesting that they have intense murder dreams, but don't actually want to kill. So it's an abrupt introduction of Glenn. I think it would have been a little bit better maybe if they reintroduced Chucky, and not necessarily Tiffany, but maybe Chucky and Tiffany first, and then they end up introducing Glenn as a character. But to just jump to Glenn immediately, it felt a little abrupt. It felt a little weird. And then, like, the whole situation of, like, somehow being in the UK. Well, I mean, you understand why, because the ventriloquist says why. But it's a weird choice to just be, like, in the UK, which has, like, no bearing on anything, really. And then being, like, you get the idea that they've been a part of this ventriloquist act for a long time. And it's just odd. It's just weird. You're just kind of like, okay. But I do like the introduction aspect of having those intense murder dreams, but then peeing themselves and being afraid of those dreams, basically. And it starts to show immediately what's really at play with this film, which is the duality of this character, Glenn. It's not just about the gender confusion that Glenn deals with, that struggle. It's also about just anyone trying to figure out who they are for the most part, especially parents, kids. Like, that's obviously something that kids always go through. Like, every kid has gone through this, whether it's gender related or not, this confusion of, like, who am I? Who do I really want to be? And like me personally, I remember when I was in high school starting to really piece my personality together, cognizantly. Like I literally remember thinking, oh man, I really like how funny this person is, and I really like, this person's honesty. I was literally thinking about traits I liked in people that I liked in school, and then being like, I want to incorporate those into me. Like, this is the person I want to be. I want to take this and this and this. And so this film like does show a good amount of that. So that's the aspect of the film I really enjoy. I think Glenn is a very interesting character. I think the design of Glenn is terrible in my opinion. They should have done something a little bit different. Maybe make Glenn look more Chucky-like. And again, that green plastic skin does not work at all. I hated that. It's such a weird choice. But yeah, like it for the most part. The Chucky movie idea is interesting, and it starts to remind me of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's very Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where they're breaking that fourth wall, and they're introducing it saying, there's a movie being made about the franchise thus far, in essence, and that's being incorporated into the movie. It's a very meta thing, and, New Nightmare came out before this, so I don't know if that's where that idea came from. But it works. It's very interesting. It's an interesting way to get a new Chucky and Tiffany going because, they've made these animatronic versions of them. And then Glenn shows up and, does the voodoo that, oddly, they know how to do voodoo, which doesn't make any sense. You would think that would have come from the influence of Chucky or even Tiffany because she knows it as well. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but yeah. Putting Jennifer Tilly in the movie is funny. It's a hilarious idea because obviously Jennifer Tilly voiced Tiffany in Bride of Chucky, and then they literally get even more meta. They're breaking that fourth wall even more and being like, look, the person who's voicing this character is also going to be in the film as themselves. There's a lot of meta going on, which I think helps with kind of this ridiculous comedic aspect of it. The film is winking at you the whole time, which I kind of at times like that and kind of at times don't really like that. So I feel very split on this. The shot of Glenn running down the road when they are initially escaping the ventriloquist, hilarious. Love that scene because it looks awful. The pace at which Glenn is moving with such short legs is ridiculous. It's leaps, basically. It literally looks like Glenn is floating to a degree. It just looks funny. I love that scene because it's ridiculous. How does Glenn just know voodoo? Again, I was asking this. And how do Charles and Tiffany's souls just magically go to these doll bodies? That's another thing. Glenn just knows voodoo randomly makes absolutely no sense. The fact that randomly those dolls suck in the souls of Tiffany and Charles Lee Ray, they're just kind of floating around in the ether waiting to get vessels, is also a weird thing. I don't really understand that. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me either, but if people want to rationalize it to me, go ahead and do it in the comments. I'm willing to listen. The wire decapitation, the first kill, well, the first real kill, not the dream kill. Awesome. Looks awesome. Lots of blood, awesome splatter. It looked good when the head just gets popped off. And then the fact that Jennifer Tilly comes in is playing with the head later looks awesome and it's funny. Love that. Love that. The kills, by and large, good in this. Also love John Waters in this film. And his death ends up being pretty good too when he gets the acid on his head. Not the CGI aspect of it because that looks terrible as we have established with the sperm. But the practical effects aspect of it after he gets burned, seeing it all burn on half of his face, looked really good. But I love John Waters. I'm from the Baltimore area is where I live. And he's a big deal. He is a very big deal in the area. And he can be seen just out and about in places. And he's a very nice guy. And he's always down to talk to people and be cordial with people. And, my sister ran into him at a restaurant one time. I didn't run into him in the wild, but I did go to a horror convention and met him, and he was super nice, and just such a cool guy. I remember him telling me that he was so excited that I had brought to him the jacket from his film Dirty Shame, And he was like, I'm so glad to see that this is the non-neuter version. Because it was the NC-17 version. I was just like, right on, John. Anyway, my love of John Waters being set aside. I also love that they insinuate that Chucky jerks it to a Fangoria magazine. I love that. And they show him jerking it. That's another thing. To set up the premise that he's going to beat off when they need to, get his sperm because they're going to knock out Jennifer Tilly and put it inside of her and then have a baby when they think just one, but it ends up being two. But just the fact that they're like insinuate he's gonna jerk it to Fangoria, that's funny. But then the fact that like show part of it, like his little like plastic hand on his little plastic wang, just like working that little plastic shaft, it was too much. But I laughed. Like I enjoyed the comedic aspect of that because I'm a child at heart and I can't help but laugh at those things. I will never not laugh at those things. Those jokes always work for me. The joke with running Brittany off the road, cringe, again. Already talked about it. I did not like that. I thought it was dumb. It is stupid that Redman just sits there after he ends up being slashed. In the scene where he dies, he literally does nothing. Like, he tries to talk a little bit, but you would first yell once you're slit, like, insanely loud. But he doesn't, like, try to get up or anything. Like, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That's bad. The kill is decent, though, because you, like, see all his guts kind of, like, pouring out. That's cool. I do like that aspect of it. Glenn yelling, "You're tearing me apart." I love that because it just makes me think of the film The Room by Tommy Wiseau, which is one of my favorite So Bad It's Good films in the world, ever. And so it made me think of that. I don't know if that was intentional, that it was referencing The Room. I feel like it had to have been. But it also works within the context of the film because literally he is being torn in two different directions by his parents in this film. Tiffany is trying to be a better parent and trying to deal with her addiction of murder and telling Glenn, no, don't do this, no, don't be like us, don't make our mistakes. Meanwhile, Chucky's on the other side saying, this is who we are. Don't you want to be like your parents? Don't you want to be a killer too? You obviously have the instinct. You want to some degree. Let's just embrace that and just be like us. So it's really this interesting situation that happens in real life with parents where they're kind of like, in certain ways they want you to be like them, and in certain ways they want you to not be like them and learn from mistakes they've made in their lives. So the family unit in this film is set up very realistically and very well, in my opinion. And that's one of the things I actually enjoy about the film. Anyway, the reveal of the Glenda fire kill. It appears the male portion is passive and the female portion is aggressive at that point. Yes, the fire kill is when you start to like really understand, oh, okay, they're actually assigning the aggressive versus passive aspect to the genders that both basically live inside of Glenn. So like Glenda is the aggressive one and Glenn is the passive one, which is very interesting. Don't think they needed to do that, but they did, and that's fine. Chucky finally embracing being a doll is a very cool moment, and it mirrors Glenn's gender confusion. Think about that, because this whole time, Glenn is going through this confusion of, do I feel like a female? Do I feel like a male? Do I want to be like my mother? Do I want to be like my father? What they're telling me to be like? Chucky is going through it too. Like throughout the entire franchise, wanting to get into the body of a person versus staying a doll. And I think that speaks to the whole Glenn gender confusion situation where Glenn is struggling with this, trying to figure out which person do I want to be. Chucky is also struggling with which person do I want to be, and ends up thinking, why can't I just stay what I am right now, who I am right now, instead of trying to change myself? And it's interesting, the way it ties in. The Shining moment is funny, since Chucky says he can't think of anything to say when it's, he does the axe and you assume he's going to say, here's Chucky, and he doesn't. I thought that was funny. I like that because you see it coming and they're just like, can't think of anything to say. That's the good humor in it. The aspect of Glenn knowing martial arts, that was ridiculous to me. That was one of those moments I was just like, Really? Really with this? No, thank you. The scene of Chucky being dismembered, pretty good. Love the amount of blood. Love the way they did the gore in that. Again, practical effects in this look nice. The kills, for the most part, are pretty good. Like that. I don't understand how hitting the nanny in the head with the Tiffany doll at the end split her head open. Where Jennifer Tilly, who's actually at that point Tiffany, that's the reveal of it. Yeah, she just like swings the Tiffany doll, hits her in the head, and she falls down, and then her head bleeds. Well, I understand if she falls down, she hits her head on the ground, and then her head bleeds, but her head was bleeding from where she didn't hit the ground with her head. It was where she was hit with the doll, and I'm just like, it doesn't have that heft. So, anyway, small thing. The reveal of Jennifer Tilly actually being Tiffany is not bad, and the idea of splitting Glenn and Glenda into the two babies is a very interesting one. This is basically saying, look, instead of being confused, instead of having to struggle with this who am I dilemma, why don't we just split your soul in two? Because that's been established in the franchise that it can be done. Let's split the soul, and here you go. The female portion here, the male portion there, aggressive, passive. It's interesting. I do like that aspect of it. Not into the severed arm at the end, though. It seemed a little tacked on and not that great and not that impactful. It's kind of like oh, no, Chucky is going to come back potentially, but you don't need that. It played off a little stupid, in my opinion. This film deals with how parents influence their children and how the children struggle with whether to be like their parents or not, like I was already saying. Also, not only is Glenn being pulled in two directions by their gender questioning, but also by their parents, one who wants to solve the family addiction and one who wants to embrace the family addiction. So again, this is also talking, it's not just about like, do you want to be like your parents? Do you want to be different? Do they want you to be like them? Do they want you to learn from their mistakes? It's also about passing down addiction within family, because it's been found scientifically that you can be more prone to addiction because of genetics. And so it's kind of playing into a little bit of that and asking the question to a degree, if the parents are murderers, are the kids then genetically predisposed to being murderers too, or can they change that pattern? So it's very interesting the way that's done. I think subtextually, thematically, this film is very interesting. It's very well done, but there's a lot of stuff that's just a little too ridiculous, done a little weird, and just doesn't work that well. So I feel very in the middle on it. Much like Glenn is confused on which way they want to go, I am the same. So out of 5 stars, I'm giving it 2.5 stars. It's like very firmly in the middle. And I think a lot of people who hate the film should rewatch it. This is very much like Nightmare on Elm Street 2, where people were initially put off because they're like, oh man, there's gay stuff in there. This is a homosexual movie. Get over it, because like that is very old thinking. B, people are people, and why do you care? And C, now that you are more comfortable with that, or should be more comfortable with that, go back and watch the movie as a movie. Because when you watch it and you're offended by the fact that there's homosexuality showing up, or in the case of this film, gender confusion in general, you're not watching the film necessarily for the film. So to be able to put that aside and go back and watch, I recommend it, definitely. So, like I said, 2.5 stars for me. Would love to hear your thoughts on this film. Put it in the comments. Like it, hate it, in between. Let me know. Give me like a sentence or two just to tell me why. And yeah, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Would really appreciate that. Also, hit the notification bell button. Also appreciate that. That's the best way to repay me for this free content. I mean, you're watching ads, which does go, turn into a little bit of money for me. A very little bit of money. But but I appreciate the subscribers and this community that's kind of building around my channel. It's awesome. It really is. I didn't expect it at this level. It was super cool. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for checking out this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.